gonna, at least in our view, define define what it is to come in the Mexican cannabis industry. We as stakeholders get to know each other, learn how to work together, and most importantly, come up with new ideas as to how to boost this nascent industry. My name is Adrian Cisneros. I'm head of the Harris Brick Mexico office, an international law firm with operations in many jurisdictions in the US, Europe, Asia, and now in Mexico. We operate in many areas, including a very high-profile cannabis practice, which are now expanding into this country. Today, I have the pleasure of meeting and hosting Ron Berkhout. Am I pronouncing your surname correctly, Ron?
Absolutely perfect.
Ron Berkhout, who's going to talk to us about action, construction, and equipments for a cannabis facility. He is the founder and the CEO of Inhuis Contrived Incorporated, a company that essentially sets a cannabis facility for you, no matter where in the cannabis supply chain you operate. This is no easy feat to be able to build a team, to tell you exactly what you need, and to leave you up and running with your cannabis business. Ron, I would like you to tell us more about the path you've gone along since you started working with your father, all the way till you expanded into the cannabis industry. Because one of the inherent philosophies behind the creation of this summit, and I've discussed this with the organizers, is learning from the experience of those who have been able to reinvent themselves from one industry to the other, and are now at the forefront of the cannabis industry in their jurisdictions. What was your path? How did you end up founding this company that has become one of the most important names in the industry in Canada?
Sure. So I am first generation Dutch Canadian. My parents immigrated here in the mid 70s. And my father's first job when I was about 4 years old was actually building greenhouses for flower farmers, vegetable farmers, first across Ontario and then across Canada. So when I was a youngster, 5 or 6 years old, I was following him around, playing in the dirt like any other child would, watching his dad work, and I would pick up bolts and nuts that fell from the roof of the greenhouse. And then since those days, fast forward now 40 years later, because I am 46 now, not getting any younger, I stayed in the horticultural market. I worked for combined almost 27 years for two of the biggest lighting companies in the world. And it was at my time when I was the general manager of Gavita Lighting, which was really one of the big names in the cannabis industry when it first started. That's when I got involved with cannabis. And in 2012, one of the first major projects that we did as part of Gavita was the first licensed producer in Colorado. So that's really where the industry started on a legalized market. And it was at that time on that project where I supplied the lighting that I brought in partner teams that I've known from traditional horticulture, brought them sort of unofficially all together to put this project together in Colorado. Then when I left Gavita in 2016, that's really when the Canadian market started taking off legally for cannabis. And there was a big gap I found between traditional horticulture and the products and the equipment and the technology that's available and the cannabis market, because everybody came from what we know as the black market and tried putting in the technologies and the methods from, say, a 20 square meter basement that they grew in to a 2,000 square meter facility. And the technologies just did not work. They did not apply. So our job here with our partners is to bridge that gap between traditional horticulture and the cannabis market.
I have a quick question regarding that. How hard was it for you to help all those who wanted to become legal to actually comply with the new regulations technically wise? Because one thing is to want to get legal and quite another to actually have the means to go legal. What were the obstacles you encountered?
So the big obstacles, and I see this in every market, it wasn't just in Canada, it was in America, it was our projects in Europe. The big obstacle we saw was planning. Too many people did not take the time to plan everything out properly, to find, the good consultants and to find the people with experience. Everybody wants to rush to be first to the market in a new industry. We saw it in Canada, we see it in Greece, we see it in Portugal. It's something that we want to avoid for Mexico. We want to make sure that you spend more time planning and take a little bit more time to do so and get it right from the beginning, instead of what we've seen, especially here in Canada, because we were at the forefront for legalizing cannabis. We saw too many companies rush in, spend an obscene and ridiculous amount of money the wrong way, and then have to go back and spend even more to fix what they had initially made the mistakes in doing.
Absolutely. And let me tell you, this happens time and time again in Mexico or in any other jurisdiction that is on the verge of legalizing something that they don't fully understand.
Absolutely.
To the first question here. What are the key aspects in building a facility of this kind? Furthermore, do you think that these key aspects are the same from place to place, or they change depending on the province you operate or in the country you operate in?
So the key aspects are really the same. At the end of the day, it's still a plant. So it still has to have the proper environment to grow in. It still has to be cared for, still has to be maintained. Again, going back to the planning portion of it, when you're looking to build a facility, and it doesn't matter if it's a 1,000 square meter facility or 10,000 square meter facility, the first thing that you must do is find a suitable piece of property. Again, too many times I've seen people find property very inexpensively, but they don't look at the big requirement, and the big requirement for setting up any sort of growing operation, if it's cannabis or vegetables or flowers, are the utilities: electricity, natural gas, water. You have to make sure that those utilities are readily available and close to where you're buying your property. Again, I've seen too many times people buy a beautiful piece of property, but they come to find that the electricity availability is 8 to 10 kilometers away. And here in Canada, if you want electricity brought to your property, it's about $500,000 Canadian per kilometer. So if you don't have the utilities available and close by, you're going to run into some obviously massive problems, but you're also going to be probably looking at millions of dollars in added expenses that you aren't ready for or can't afford.
Right. It's interesting that you raise these points because actually, yeah, a few moments ago when I was talking with Chris, I was telling him, hey, how easy is it to translate your experience to the Mexican environment, considering that, for instance, infrastructure-wise, here we have huge differences between some states and others.
Right.
You have a difference in Mexico. I'm sure you already know this as well as I do. There's the developed north and the undeveloped south, and that really influences the decisions of international companies, regardless of the industry, not just cannabis, as to where to locate. Yeah, because of course you have to secure your supply, your distribution chain. You need to have easy access to utilities. So if it was important to implement a security plan, as Chris pointed out, it is all the more important when you build a facility. has it happened to you that, notwithstanding you're pointing out that that's not the right location for the facility, the client or the customer actually insisting on building there, and then costs are just build up?
Yep, absolutely. It's happened on more than one occasion. The most recent example I can think of was possibly not even a month ago. A client approached me and said, I found a perfect piece of land. We bought it, we secured it. Now you have to design our facility for us. So the first thing we do as a group is we look to our engineers and we ask them to say, you know, are the utilities there? Is natural gas there? Is electricity there? Is water there? So they went to this property. Water supply was perfect. There was an abundance of water, but natural gas and electricity were not available. So we did a quick cost analysis, and I unfortunately had to be the bearer of bad news to the client that for him to get his natural gas and his electricity to his property was going to be a $10 million Canadian cost and 2.5 years of waiting. So it is so, it's so important to pre-plan and do your homework before you even start thinking about constructing a facility.
Okay, so would you say that, and I don't know how many companies actually do that, because in my experience with the firm, almost none, but the right thing to do would be to actually engage your services to go and prospect land even before moving forward with any transaction.
Absolutely. I mean, we offer clients a checklist that they can review themselves, or if they have a friend. I always recommend, and this is what sort of keeps the industry universal. I recommend taking our checklist and going to a real estate agent and saying, Mr. Real Estate Agent, if you want to earn your commission on a sale, here is the list of requirements that we need to have at any piece of property that you find for us. And that's really a real estate agent's job. It's no different than buying a home. If you're a growing family and you need 3 bedrooms or 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, it's a list that you give your real estate agent, and it's their responsibility to find that property. And that works so much easier, especially globally, because especially in this current situation the world is in right now, it's so much easier just for our firm to give a checklist to clients and say, go find this property that ticks off all these boxes.
It's great. It's great that you mentioned all this, because I wouldn't be surprised that a common misconception regarding your company is that you are only devoted to building or repurposing facilities, when in reality you provide full-fledged services.
Yeah.
Anything pertaining facility construction. So now moving forward to this very question, in your opinion and your experience, if everything has been considered, what's the cost of building and operating a cannabis facility? I would say the most common one, the one we most often get inquiries of is processing facilities.
Correct. So processing facilities, and this is again where every country is different. In Mexico, and we'll obviously focus on Mexico, but Mexico is looking at medicinal marijuana. So in that instance, to process and do it properly, to be able to distribute not only within Mexico but potentially also globally, because Europe right now is still very needy for high quality medical dried cannabis. A processing facility has to be looked at as almost a pharmaceutical grade. So it has to be very clean. It has to be very sterile. I often relate it to an owner of a facility being a surgeon and walking into an operating room. That's how clean and sterile and efficient it has to be. A good facility like that, to meet all the global requirements for pharmaceutical and medical grade, is roughly about 6,000 Mexican pesos per square foot, or 60,000 pesos per square meter. So that's the processing facility part of it. The cultivation part of it, if you look at doing a very cost-effective and obviously taking advantage of Mexico's climate, building a greenhouse in that sense, you can build a very efficient, smoothly run greenhouse for about 25,000 to 30,000 pesos per square meter. And that's with everything included. That is tables, that is lighting, the actual structure, irrigation equipment, construction, installation, everything included.
Okay, great. Great that you expanded into cultivation facilities. That was going to be my next question. And speaking of questions, we have Amy King in the audience. Amy, would you like to open your mic to ask your question, or do you want me to relay to Ron directly?
Yeah, I was just wondering how we, is it, when you say you have a list, you would take a list to your real estate agent.
Yep.
Is that a list I can find somewhere? Or is this something that we hire you and you give us this list to take to our real estate people? How does that work?
Yeah, so once I believe all my contact information is on the Summit website, I believe, Amy. So if you just want to send me an email, then I will absolutely give you that list with as complimentary. It's quite honestly, it's just a pre-printed list. It applies everywhere, so that's something I'm more than happy to do gratis for anyone that wants that checklist.
Thank you, Ron. Now, moving right along to our next question. We had already begun discussing this topic. What are the main challenges when building a cannabis facility? Of course, it depends on the actual characteristics or the actual features of the terrain, the climate, but are there any common challenges you encounter when building or repurposing facilities, not a jurisdiction or country notwithstanding?
So the biggest hurdle we see when we're trying to retrofit a facility, if it's an indoor facility, I always try to tell growers to stay away from those. Again, because mainly of the utilities. In cannabis, we all know that if you grow cannabis indoors, you need sole source lighting, whether it's traditional high pressure sodium lights or metal halides or now LED fixtures. It's still a big power draw. So you're still using kilowatts and kilowatts of power. So you want to sort of try to avoid those simply because, again, bringing in power, it may be cost prohibitive to do so. If there is an existing greenhouse operation, and we see a lot of this, especially here in Canada, and I know from my time and my father's time of building greenhouses that there are quite a few greenhouses in Mexico as well. Most of the ones that we see issues with are greenhouses that are covered with plastic. That is not anywhere near conducive for cannabis plants. Because cannabis plants are really, really finicky when it comes to moisture and humidity. And in a plastic greenhouse, all too often I've seen too many diseases created by growing cannabis in a converted plastic greenhouse. So you really want to look at existing polycarbonate greenhouses or glass greenhouses. But you have to be very careful with that too, because one of the big problems we see here in Canada is a lot of cannabis operations now are buying vegetable greenhouses where they used to grow tomatoes and cucumbers. In theory, this sounds really great. The biggest problem with that is most of those greenhouses are anywhere between 100 to 300 meters long. And what ends up happening is the climate is from one end to the other, there's so much variability that it's actually damaging to the cannabis plants. So we always recommend you want to find a shorter greenhouse because the climate is easier to control than it is to say buy a longer greenhouse and try and get as many plants in there as possible. That actually has the reverse effect of what you're trying to accomplish by maintaining a stable climate for the plant.
You have just raised a very interesting point because indeed, at least in our experience the firm, we've been hearing of a lot of people, either individuals or companies here in Mexico involved in the agricultural business. People who are already growing fruits and vegetables for export into North America and Europe, and that now want to expand into the cannabis industry. They are all hiring consultants that tell them how to repurpose their facilities. And because they have told them that in paper, in theory, their facilities and their land are actually suitable to grow cannabis and even cannabis for medical use, medical cannabis, they get all excited and think it's going to be easy. You know, the point is that those consultants don't actually bring a team together to build your growing or your processing facility as you do. So it's important. It's important for all of our audience that you point this out, because we need to raise awareness. It's not only it's not just another plant.
Right. In some senses, it's still what we call a short day plant, because it does grow and flower at night. But on the other hand, we have to look at the medical side of it. So we can't allow and we can't have mold or powdery mildew or botrytis or spider mites or white flies or any sort of, pests and diseases that you see in flower ranges, especially also in vegetable ranges, because with medical cannabis, we're not allowed to use the pesticides that flower growers or vegetable growers are permitted to use. So we have to maintain a very steady and accurate microclimate with all the traditional cannabis temperatures, let's say, no more than 23 degrees Celsius at any given time. Try to maintain the humidity levels below 60%, which if you look at especially vegetable greenhouses, those houses can get up to 27, 28, 30, 29 degrees Celsius and have anywhere between 80 and 85% humidity, which for vegetables, they can handle it. A cannabis plant, that is just opening the door for all sorts of diseases. And if we're looking at the medicinal market, we're looking at a total crop loss if those sort of scenarios happen.
In this respect, a very quick ancillary question to that. Has a client ever come to you saying, hey, something happened, I don't know, but I need to rebuild my facilities from the ground up because I did everything wrong. Can you help me? Has it ever happened to you, or nobody can go that bad?
No, it's actually happened, and I'm obviously, for certain reasons, I won't mention the names, but it's one of the bigger Canadian operations that everybody knows, where they went ahead and, again, without consulting either with a science grower or someone like myself, bought a property and called us after they had purchased the property. And we went down and we looked, and I turned, and I'm very candid. I turned to the CEO of this company and I just flat out said to him, your next move is to buy a bulldozer and start everything all over again, because it will, in most instances, when you're trying to convert a greenhouse or a warehouse or whatever type of structure, it's actually cheaper just to demolish and build new than it is to try and retrofit something that's pre-existing, that's not conducive. So again, it goes back, and I've been accused of saying it one too many times, it goes back to planning. You have to spend that extra time planning. And you might not end up being the first to market, but if you surround yourself with a good team of consultants and people with knowledge and history of the industry, the extra 6 months you'll spend on planning will probably equate to an extra 6 years of longevity in the business, if not longer.
Very well said. Very well said. Next slide, please. So, taking of these different challenges you've encountered, I don't know how conclusive you can be concerning this question, because I think it depends. But I'd like to hear your opinion. Do you think it's better to grow in a greenhouse or rather a warehouse? And this is important because, for instance, here in Mexico, some people have just seen greenhouses in movies. It's like we're more used to the concept of warehouse. It also depends on climate. Even more people are simply used to outdoor growing, and then when it comes to medical use, you realize that you do need a greenhouse. So regulations notwithstanding, what's best for you?
So by all means, and this is where I'm sort of biased, but the best successes that I've seen, both from a growing point of view, but also more importantly, a financial point of view, it's better to grow in a greenhouse. And I've heard the misconceptions of that the quality is better in a warehouse because they can control the climate better and everything that goes along with it. The big difference is, and this is a number that a lot of people tend to be shocked by, and then until they do the research or they've seen it in action, they don't believe it. But it is 45% cheaper to run a cannabis greenhouse than a cannabis warehouse. So it is
% cheaper?
45% cheaper in
Wow.
operational expense to run a greenhouse than a warehouse. And let's be honest here, a greenhouse, there's no better lighting source than natural sunlight. And especially in a country like Mexico, where, compared to us here in Canada, where you have an abundance more of sunlight within the day to take advantage of and to allow the plant to become saturated and get as much natural sunlight as you can without having to use supplemental lighting, again, like high pressure sodium, metal halide, or LEDs. That cost that you're saving by using natural sunlight within a greenhouse, and most greenhouses, no matter what the roof structure is made of, whether it's clear polycarbonate or glass, the lowest light transmission rate of any sort of glazing material on the roof of a greenhouse is 89 to 90%. So take advantage of the natural sunlight, because the less that you have to run supplemental lighting, that's just more dollars on your bottom line at the end of the year. And the biggest thing to dispel the biggest notion, quality in a greenhouse, again, monitored properly with the right control systems, with the right progressive attitude as a grower, quality is the same, if not better, in a greenhouse than what you would see in a warehouse.
Well, you have just.
I know. I keep rolling into the next question.
Because I was actually going to ask you that. Yeah, exactly. So we're connected here, right? So you would say that quality is the most important thing. Is like when you build a facility, you have to first take into account what kind of end product you're going to come up with, either raw material or finished product. But quality is the most important aspect for any cannabis company. Would you agree with that? Would you agree with that statement?
It's one of the three. I always say there's three things in a facility that are equally as important: quality, efficiency, and consistency. The biggest downfall we see with our industry is that you can have one turn after a 56-day flowering cycle. You can have phenomenal THC levels, anywhere between 24 and 28% THC, good terpene profile, good cannabinoidal profile. But your next run, you change one thing without changing the entire ecosystem of the grow. And that next run, it can be the exact same strain, it can be grown in the exact same growing media, done exactly the same way, but all of a sudden your THC content drops below that 24%. And whether that's a grower that's gotten a shiny new toy that he wants to try out, or he believed a sales pitch from somebody without doing his homework, who knows what the case may be. But the key to any successful operation is consistently growing that strain within the window of what you set in your business plan and what your customers are demanding, especially on the medical side. The other key to that is efficiency. You want to put in as much efficient equipment as possible, not only from a carbon footprint point of view, but also what makes it easier for your staff to work. You want to be as efficient as possible. You don't want to have 6 or 7 extra set of hands in your facility, because labor is a operating cost that is with you from the day you open the doors till the day you retire. So,
And sorry,
go ahead.
Aaron. So in this regard, please let's move to the next slide here. So in this regard, anyone who has spent quite some time in the cannabis industry in any developed market, such as the Canadian one or the American one, will understand that those three key aspects are the most important ones any cannabis company have to look for. But what happens when you try to translate your experience from Canada or your American experience to a country that is just about to open its medical or recreational industry? Are you foreseeing any challenges trying to get people to understand the importance of these tricky things? Do you think, and most importantly, do you think that this lack of understanding, if any, is gonna prevent them from fully understanding what you're advising them about, construction-wise or technology-wise, when building their facilities?
So I think the biggest hurdle that we as an industry have to overcome is ego. There are a lot of, and I don't like the word consultant, but there are a lot of consultants who basically go to clients and say, this is how you have to do it. This is what I know this is what I've done, and this is how I've done it. That doesn't apply 9 times out of 10. So the biggest key, and again, this kind of goes into that whole planning idea as well. The biggest key for anybody that wants to get into this market in Mexico is you have to surround yourself with a team of knowledgeable people, but that team that you surround yourself with have to be able, most importantly, to work together, but have to understand that each one of them is brought in for a specific purpose. So you find a good security consultant, you find a good documentation consultant that's relates to your business plan, your business strategies, your operating procedures. You find a good construction consultant, or you find a good equipment supplier. Make sure that you do your homework and you vet these companies, right? There are a lot of companies out there that I've seen pop up in the last 6 to 8 months saying that, oh, I'm now a growing consultant, or I'm a cannabis consultant. Well, my definition of a consultant, I have 2 definitions of it. A consultant is somebody that should know everything about everything. And we as a team don't. We all have our strong suits and we stay in those lanes. The other definition of a consultant is just somebody who couldn't get a real job. So you have to do, not only when it comes to planning out your facility, but you have to plan out the team that's going to help you get to that facility. Vet them, talk to other clients, look at their experience, look at what they have done. You put that together as a plan, and you can bring in and translate what we've learned in Canada over the past decade. And you could not only do it in Mexico, but you could move that into the US. You could move that to Europe, Australia. So long as you surround yourself with the right people and have a plan together from both a construction point of view, but also a strategy point of view, a financial point of view, you've covered those bases and you're going to be successful in this industry. And you have to listen to what the people with experience that have seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, listen to that experience, whether it's been good, whether it's been bad, but take that experience with an open mind. And then sit down internally with your team and decide, okay, this is the group of people that are going to help me be successful. And this is the group of people that we mesh with on a personality point of view, but it's a group of people that we know are successful and are bringing us the right knowledge and the right equipment and the right everything to the table.
Okay, so based on what you just said, I take it that you share Chris's opinion in that collaboration is key. It's like whenever you move, you cannot pretend to be everywhere at the same time, and you can't pretend to know everything at the same time. So you'll be looking, when expanding into Mexico, you'll be looking to partner with people you can you can get understood by, people who understand your standards, but can also help you navigate through the regulatory and business environment.
Absolutely, and then for us specifically from the construction environment as well, I'm a huge advocate of not only building facilities around the world, but also building facilities to boost the local economy. So I never send my electricians or my technicians down to the States or into Mexico. I want to find a group of local people that we can work with the understanding that yes, there will be a project manager on site that they have to report to, but no matter where you do engineer drawings from a technical point of view, no matter where you have them done in the world, as long as they meet the codes of wherever you're building, anybody, any plumber, gas fitter, electrician can read a set of plans. And for us personally, and it's been a great success for us, we welcome working with those people because, like I said, it creates jobs and boosts the economy wherever we're building a facility, but it also gives us a sense of peace of mind that the job is not only going to get done right, but it gives the client a peace of mind because it's done by people in the area that know the rules and regulations much, much better than we do.
Great. Yeah, and that's going to become, I suppose, all the more important when it comes to maintain those facilities over time.
Absolutely.
Right. Oh, we have a question here. Amy again. She's asking you, where do you rank the dry cure process as part of the process?
So drying and curing, and it's a great question, Amy. It really depends what your business strategy is going to be. If you look, say, for example, if you want to export to Europe, we all know Germany is a big monster right now for importing cannabis from around the world. Italy is coming up really quick. So according to the regulations there, the EU GMP standards, which is the European Union Good Manufacturing Processing Standards, they say that it starts in the drying area. So drying is very, very key. Curing is a personal preference. I've seen clients be able to dry down to an 11% moisture content, which is usually the industry standard, just in their drying room, and then they don't have to cure it. Again, with much like growing cannabis, with drying cannabis, it has to be done using proven technologies. And again, it's part of the research package where you work again with the companies that are successful at doing it, that have built these facilities, built drying rooms, do the proper method, and really know how to get a solid, even dry throughout every string, every bud that you put in there, or every branch that you hang dry. So in a roundabout way, it's a personal choice by, again, your processing team, how it gets done, but most importantly, how efficient and effective it gets done.
Do you have any other questions, members of the audience? Any other question, comment to our guest? Questions? No, just comments. Well, they are all saying that your presentation was very insightful, Ron.
Excellent.
So I'll have one last question for you.
Sure.
I'm not sure whether or how far you've gone into prospecting the possibilities of the Mexican market. Where do you think or which locations do you think so far are the most suitable for international cannabis companies to build facilities in?
I haven't looked into it personally, shame on me, but I would imagine northern Mexico. Again, as you mentioned earlier, Adrian, about the, it's a little, I would say, more developed in northern Mexico than it is in southern Mexico. And of course, looking down the future, I believe we all know that the Americans are going to eventually legalize on a federal level and not just on a state level. That will really open the doors for Mexico to export to the US. And that's simply because looking at the state regulations and what they've so far dictated as medicinal marijuana in the US, there's going to be a big overhaul required with some of the facilities in the US to actually be true medicinal cannabis. And that's where I think Mexico really will be able to jump on it quickly and export into the US. And I think being closer to that border is just going to make everything a little bit more easier for all the companies in Mexico looking to export.
Okay, so do I understand that for many Mexican companies here to follow the regulations, in that they will have to build from scratch? They wouldn't have to retrofit facilities, or they wouldn't have to repurpose facilities to actually being able to jump into the new supply chains. Am I understanding this correctly? That it's going to be easier for Mexican companies to, for instance, engage your services and build a proper facility from the first moment?
Yeah, I think it's definitely easier, just from what we've seen and from our personal experience with our teams. It's definitely easier to build something brand new. But the great thing as well is, especially if you look at greenhouses, and especially if you look at the way that we design processing facilities, greenhouses are like building blocks. You can start very, very small. No one says you have to start with a 10,000 square meter facility. It's just unrealistic. We always push clients to start smaller and expand as you grow. With greenhouses, like I said, it's building blocks. I'm fortunate enough to have a staff member on my team who's very, very creative, and she manages to design processing facilities so that it can be built in stages, yet when it's all done and you've reached your maximum potential that you want to grow to, it looks like you built the facility all at once.
Amazing.
So again, it's that planning stage, and I cannot emphasize it enough. Plan ahead, plan for the future, know what your goals are, and just make sure that you have that solid foundation and you have that solid team around you.
Yes, this is the key takeout: planning key.
Planning.
Absolutely. So I think we don't have any more questions. Well, thank you all. It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure to meet you, Ron, to talk to you, to host you. Ladies and gentlemen of the audience, Ron Berkhout.
Thank you, Adrian.
Thank you for attending. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your insight, your knowledge with us, Ron. The Mexico Cannabis Summit continues. Please be sure to partake in all the other conferences. Notwithstanding the language, I'm telling you, you're something, I will record everything. So my name is Adrian Cisneros, head of Harrisburg in Mexico. Have a good afternoon. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.